Welcome to Modern Animism, a holistic spiritual path. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Laura Giles, your host for today's show. There are always lots of changes happening around here, and you are a big part of it. We listen to every comment and question, and that helps to shape what we do. So please keep reaching out and doing that. In fact, one of your questions inspired the topic of today's show, which is fundamental mind shifts that have to happen if you're going to understand animism and live an animistic lifestyle. That's a bit longer than we typically do for a video, so we'll tackle it in today's podcast. So let's acknowledge and give gratitude to the elements and ancestors so that we can get started. I acknowledge the element of earth and thank you for our home, food, this wonderful planet that we share our lives with, stability, strong foundation, and the physicality to enjoy our human experience. I acknowledge and thank the element of air. Thanks for inspiring us with creative ways to approach life, the ability to communicate, and discernment so that we can make sense of what we perceive. I acknowledge and thank the element of fire for power and responsibility, the two things that have to be balanced in order for us to practice sovereignty. I acknowledge and thank the element of water for the rain that the hurricane is bringing that will help our plants to continue to grow and give us water to drink. I appreciate the example you give for how to flow around obstacles, wear down the rough spots in life, be patient, and keep moving. I acknowledge and thank our loving, helping ancestors from the human, plant, animal, and mineral realms. Each day I learn more and more about how we're intertwined, so from the bottom of my heart, I give gratitude for all the ways that you love, help, and support me that are seen and unseen. Thank you. I invite all listeners to support us if you benefit or are inspired by any of our content. Your donations help keep us going. No donation is too small. If you'd like to contribute, you can do that on our website at www.pansociety.net. If you have other ideas on how you can contribute, please drop me a line. So, what are these mindset shifts that I'm talking about? It's hard to talk about them really because it's like stepping outside of your own reality paradigm and into someone else's. It's like talking about your own culture. It's really not easy to do unless someone asks a question, points something out, or makes a cultural error. So these things are not only mindset shifts that are different for animists. They're just the ones that are jumping out at you right now. Okay? Ready? So here we go. The first one is this idea that we're separate from nature. Now, I know that I sleep in my bed and bears sleep in the woods. So clearly we are physically separate. And yet we're not. We're animals. When people ask me about animals, I have to stop and ask which animals. Are people included? People are animals. I'm not sure how some people forget that. It's like we're separate from the planet, animal, and mineral kingdoms. We are, but we're not. Our language is isolating. It makes clear distinctions between things, and that's the way the brain works. It groups like things together and unlike things together, and generally sees unlike things as dangerous and something to avoid, and that's how we avoid death. So it's adaptive, and that's just what the brain does. So to overcome that, it would be great to have some different language that also shows the connection between things. And some languages have these types of words, but English doesn't. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Non-animists tend to see things as alive and dead. They also tend to give everything a hierarchy. Alive things are more valuable and have more power than quote-unquote dead things. Things with more power are more important than things with less power. So animals are more important than rocks. People are more important than animals, and men are more important than women or children. To take that to another level, the gods are more powerful than people. For earth-based religions, and animism is an earth-based religion, there's no hierarchy. We're all brothers and sisters, even with the gods. We're not separate from the gods. I know that is a huge shift for a lot of people who are used to thinking of gods as distant creatures who don't need us. No, that's what worship is for. That's what offerings are for. They need us to pray and interact with them, or else they don't exist. So the whole world is intertwined. Everything is equal in the matrix. Did you know that soil is created by decomposers like worms and bacteria that break down plants? Mycelia from mushrooms carry nutrients and enzymes from different plants and animals and allow organisms to grow there. It's a living matrix. It's that way all over, only we don't see it. Everything depends on everything else, and we're all equal players. And I love the example of soil because it's easier to see that that what's the um, example of the what's in the little thing is in the big thing. I can't remember that little phrase right there, but that's it in soil. You know what you see happening in the soil happens outside of the soil. We just, I don't know, for some reason don't see it. If you want to get smart and think about controlling things, so you want to wipe out the top predator, like the wolves were all killed in the UK, you can really change the whole ecosystem. So when something goes extinct in an area, you really don't know the impact it's going to have. Even if you think it's a good thing, like mosquitoes, you could be upsetting the ecosystem in a way that changes it forever because of that whole matrix thing. We really have messed things up by assuming the role of top dog and subjecting everything to our needs. We stripped the land of resources, fought and killed people for territory, wiped out their cultures, ruined habitats, drove plants and animals to extinction. And all of those things ripple down to us. They negatively impact us. Even our farming practices are hideously inhumane. Have you ever seen a large feedlot? I was driving in California once and saw this for the first time. Imagine hundreds or maybe thousands of cows on brown dirt. It's not even grass. There are so many cows packed together that they killed the grass a long time ago and nothing is growing there. So the topsoil is gone and it's not good for anything. The cows are packed together, standing in the hot sun, and there's big tubs of water and hay out there, and there they are, bored to death, waiting to die or be somebody's dinner. Now, everybody's got to eat, but when you raise meat like that, how nutritious do you think that is? How much soul do you think inhabits that meat? To make it maybe a little more close to home so that you can imagine it, have you ever eaten a farm-raised egg? And I'm talking about a free-ranging chicken egg. Now compare that to a factory farm egg. The color's different, the flavor's different. The farm-raised egg has a lot more life force in it, doesn't it? It tastes more alive, doesn't it? So to me, raising cows like that is robbing them of their life force. It's not kind. We have to think about these things. It ripples back to us. I mean, not to mention that it's not as healthy because they don't get what they would get if they were in the grass. So there's a reason why animist cultures live the way they do. It's not about lack of technology or resources, because there are animist cultures today that either choose not to have those things or don't rely on them as heavily as we do. They see the long-term impact and they don't want that for themselves, their children, or other non-human brothers, the plants, the animals, and minerals. I don't think anyone is going to go back to the Stone Age. I'm not. But the more we choose to support businesses that use sustainable methods of food production, energy production, and other things, the more that businesses will provide them. When my family began eating gluten-free, there were few gluten-free alternatives. Those that existed were really expensive, and now they're plentiful and not so expensive. So we all have power. We have buying power. If you don't consume it, they won't create it. And if you don't support it, they're not going to make it because everybody's in it for the money, which is not a bad thing. But you know, whatever you support, they're going to keep making more of. I think I talked about this on another podcast, but sovereignty is about the right use of power. And when you have power, and humans are the most powerful of creatures on the planet, it's your responsibility to protect those with less power. Men are respectful of women and children. Humans are respectful of plants, animals, and minerals. They can't advocate for themselves and say, no, I don't want you here. So we're all equals, but we're not equally powerful. We have to use our power well so that we don't damage the matrix. You know, if you cut off your toe, it impacts your balance. That's the same thing that happens when something goes extinct. You have to compensate for its loss. After too much adjustment, the whole thing just collapses. If each of us does our part, we can turn this thing around. Another thing I'm asked about all the time, and this doesn't necessarily come out as a question, but it's an assumption embedded within conversation, and that's the idea of complementary duality. Well, Actually, people are talking from an antagonistic duality standpoint, meaning good versus evil or God versus the devil. And that doesn't exist in animism. There are bad spirits in some cultures, but this is not the same thing as the devil. These bad spirits are generally part of someone's curse, or they're a tree spirit or a river spirit that was wronged and they hit back. So there aren't dark entities that stalk you unaware. In animism, it's a reflection of nature. Well, it is nature. Um, Day has a partner, and that's night. The moon has a partner, that's the sun. Masculine and feminine are always going to exist together. So when something bad happens, it's not like God is trying to punish you. If you didn't do something to cause it, it just happened. Order follows chaos, and chaos follows order. For example, there's a hurricane churning out in the ocean right now. It's a big one that can do some serious damage. And if it does, it's just a part of nature, and we roll with it. Now, animals don't judge hurricanes or tsunamis. They tune in and get out of the way. And if we were wise, we'd do the same. Undesirable things happen. That's life. These things can be the greatest gifts if you see them as balancing, karmic lessons, or just ways to learn. Nobody wants to be homeless, raped, beaten, cheated on, or have a health crisis, but all of these things can deepen our connection with ourselves, with others, and this planet if we let them. I don't know if we will ever get to the time where we don't have to have hard lessons like those, but as long as we do, if we just see them as my time to do the heavy lifting, we're going to get through. Remember that you're always supported. There's a long line of ancestors rooting for you. You're part of the matrix too, and it's intelligent. Even if we can't feel that connection, I believe that other organisms feel that connection to us. Have you ever been in the woods and felt the trees? They're alive. The sea is alive. I was recently in the woods and walked right up on a deer and then a squirrel, and neither one budged. They just went right on doing what they were doing. They sensed no danger, and it wasn't like they didn't see, hear, or smell me. It was that they knew I was a friend. I'm guessing. I can't tell you what they were thinking, but I'm guessing they knew that I was not a threat. And this happens when you tune in. I promise you, as you become more aware of your place in the matrix, this will happen more and more to you. You'll see. So I guess the takeaway with complementary duality is don't fight. There are no enemies. It's just the other side of the coin. I hope that makes you more accepting and less judgmental. So when you see a drug addict, prostitute, robber baron, or whatever else you deem to be undesirable, see yourself in that person. You are that. I am that. That is you and me. When you get to that point, you will find you have a bottomless well for compassion. Another thing that just doesn't work in the animist world is this Western idea of always reaching for the cream of the crop. You know, we're so lucky to live in the West. We don't eat bones in our meat. Unless you go to a butcher or a Latin, Asian, Indian, or Mediterranean grocery store, you can't even get bones in your meat. We don't eat heads on our fish. We don't have organ meats in the grocery store, usually, or other parts like pig's feet or chicken feet. Everything is made for our convenience, and everything is the best. And look what that's gotten us. We're really unhealthy people. We have to supplement, work out like crazy, and we suffer from postpartum depression, mental illness, and all sorts of autoimmune disorders. Why? Because we ignored the matrix. You can't just eat the good parts of an animal or plant and throw the rest away. The body isn't nourished that way. You can't live in the penthouse without building a strong foundation. You can't harvest fruits and vegetables without tending seedlings. But that's what we want. We want to take the weekend or the 4-week class and be a master at something. We want to not learn the basics of how to live and have someone do it for us. And my brother says, don't fail at the easy stuff. Learning how to take care of yourself, that's sovereignty. Learning how to do the basics like social skills, hygiene, conversation, going to a job every day, cleaning up after yourself, that's the easy stuff. The top of something is generally shaped like a mountain, you know? There isn't a lot of room up there, but it's supported by this big foundation, and that's just nature. In a holistic connected system, we have to include the bottom if we're going to be in sync with nature. It has a purpose. It sustains us. When I open up and I say, hey, thank you to the earth. Thank you for sustaining us. Thanks for the foundation. That's what I'm talking about. You don't just reach for the top, especially if you can't stand on your own. It's going to fall. Maybe you have enough money to pay somebody to be that bottom for you, but unless you can do those things, you're probably not a very capable person. Be humble. Do the dirty work. Help others who are doing the dirty work. And be whole. Don't fail at the easy stuff. Kind of related to that is the idea of living happily ever after. Guys might have skipped this part, but I know girls don't. Well, maybe with the Disney era they do, because Disney has strong females now and they don't rely on men. I'm not sure that's the greatest thing either. Maybe I'll talk about that in an upcoming podcast. For now, I will say that happily ever after isn't in the wheel of life. It just isn't. There isn't a peak where we stop, put our feet up, and we're done. It's a circle. It just keeps going round and around. You create something new, it grows, it peaks, then declines and dies. You rest, gestate a new idea, and then you start again. And if you're not doing that, you're stagnating. And we as a culture are not good at letting go. We want to be 21 or 120 pounds or whatever we used to be that we feel like is the peak. And that's not how life works. There is no happily ever after, and time doesn't stand still. We all have plenty of times of want, times of warmth and times of cold, times of love and times of emptiness. Everything can teach us. Everything is purposeful. When you approach each season as where you're meant to be, it's a blessing. And it is. Doesn't each season of the year have a blessing? In the spring, we have lambs, chicks, daffodils, and warmer days that delight us. It's a time that reminds us of renewal and rebirth. Summer is maturity, plenty, fun, and activity. Fall is a rest from all that activity, a break from the heat, and a release from the energy it requires to do all that. Winter's a break. Of course, each season has negatives too, but that's the complementary duality piece. You don't get the blessings without things that you don't like do. One more and then we're going to be out of time. Okay. So another huge Western idea that doesn't really translate well in animism is the idea that money is how we keep score. Modern society places a lot of emphasis on money. So much so that lots of parents pressure their kids to do well in school and don't teach them social skills, household skills, or interpersonal skills. They grow up not knowing how to function as a human being. But they're well positioned for getting a job. Or their kids go to school and they get this education that's so expensive that they can never pay it back by getting a job in the field that they studied in. Or the kids are not able to function as adults, so they can't go to work at all. And the parents spend all this money on college only to continue supporting their adult children who don't work or are underemployed. There's something really wrong with that picture, y'all. Money and taking tests are not the most important things. I'm not going to say education is not important, because I certainly don't believe that. But from what I hear from teachers, most kids aren't actually getting an education. They're learning how to pass a test, and that's not the same thing. So I'm getting a little sidetracked. And the point is, if you're keeping score by how much money someone has, you could be bamboozled when you find out that they don't actually have money. They have tons of debt. Or more than that, you could find out that the stuff isn't worth all that much if you don't have connection. So I can't say that I didn't know this when I was younger, but I can say that my appreciation and understanding of this has deepened as I've gotten older. And when I was young, I was shy and I didn't really like large groups of people. My social circle was small. And that was comfortable and happy. But it wasn't a community the way that it is now. And if you don't have a community, let me tell you that you're missing out. It's a different layer of being that kind of solidifies your body, your presence, and your being in the world. And all that filters out to include the plant, animal, and mineral kingdoms. It's like you get more solid somehow. And if you're keeping score with money, I don't know how you're going to get there. You just won't have the time. So it's like that, when I was talking about that soil and it just like your web, I don't know, it just goes everywhere. So don't get me wrong. I'm not against money at all. God bless everyone who has it to spare. I'm sure you all worked hard for it and earned it. You can spend it any way you want. If you're chasing it and making your life about that, though, you're probably going to be really disappointed. I've been facilitating past life regression for a long time. I see very few people who have lived happily ever after. Most get to the end of their life clueless, lonely, unhappy. Then they're reborn and do it all over again. And if there's one takeaway I've gotten from doing regression work is don't live like that. When I ask people what they regret, and I do this so that they have to say it out loud and hear themselves say it so that they can remember it and bring it back into this world with them, they always say they wish they were more connected. So there you have it. You can benefit from that without having a past life regression. So don't keep score with money. If you're going to keep score, do it with love. Or maybe, I don't know, that's not something you want to keep score with either. But you don't want to do it with something that masquerades as love, like obsession or possession. But real love, open-handed love, connection. Who's my community? Who are my people? Who do I matter to? Who matters to me? At the end of the day, I can't tell you how many people go to their death and saying, I wish I had had that. So I know those are really hard things to overcome when we live in a society that's not like that, but it can be done. Talk to people who believe like you believe. When you see it reflected back to you, it's going to help you change your inside. Remember that animism is holistic. It can't just be something that you think or believe. It's about how you behave. It's how you live and how you love. It's that mind, body, and spirit thing. It's that air, earth, fire, and water thing. It's a lot to learn. Books can help. The videos, podcasts, and blog posts can help. I believe it ultimately comes down to experience, though. You have to live it. If you have problems connecting the dots and want mentoring to deepen your practice of animism, check out pansociety.org. That's where Sherry and I are offering coaching. We'll always answer your questions on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the podcast. It might take a little while, though, just to get it in the queue. You can also email me at laura@pansociety.net. We love your feedback and love hearing from you. It's about a community. You talk to us, we talk to you. And I'd like to close by sending gratitude to you, the elements, our loving, helping ancestors. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this edition of Modern Animism Radio. Please donate, as we do need your financial and emotional support. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Laura Giles for Pan Society Radio. Thank you, and see you next week.